Hello, I'm here during the lunch rush with Janice, who owns her own food truck.
Best cheesesteaks in town.
Janice traded up to Geico Commercial Auto Insurance for her food truck business. We're here where she needs us most.
They sure are.
We make it so easy for her to save, with customised coverage that grows with her business. Sorry, I just get so emotional talking about saving folks money.
Not this onion I'm chopping?
It's just so beautiful. Oh yeah, no, it's the onion.
Get a commercial auto insurance quote today at geico.com and see how much you could save. It feels good to Geico.
One simple letter could change a child's life.
Our guest today did exactly that.
More than 10 years ago, kindergarten teacher Tricia Zarro wrote a letter to guide dogs for the blind with a simple question. Could dogs that didn't qualify as guide dogs help children with autism?
And 1 year later, they wrote back and asked if her family might become the first family to receive one. That's incredible.
That one letter helped open the door to something life-changing for families across the country.
So today we're talking about advocacy, kindness, and leveling the playing field for children, and how sometimes the smallest actions create the biggest impact.
Welcome back to Big Little Lessons. I'm Jenny.
And I'm Christine.
Today we're talking with kindergarten teacher and advocate Tricia Zarro.
Hi, Trish.
Thank you.
Trish began her career as a recreational therapist, working in camps and recreation programs for people with disabilities before becoming a kindergarten teacher.
Yes, she's been a teacher for more than 27 years. She has helped young children and their families navigate their early school years, especially families whose children have special needs.
She is also the board president of BluePath Service Dogs, an organization that provides autism service dogs to families completely free of charge. And we're going to hear all about this today. So let's get to know you, Trish. Before we dive in, we love to start with the same question. What's your earliest school memory?
That was easy. I had a teacher in the first grade. Her name was Mrs. Chester, bless her. And I, thinking about that, I always just think of her name and smile. But the first thing that comes to my mind about Mrs. Chester was kindness. I'm from a family of 5, and we had a busy life growing up. And I just felt like when I got to her classroom, I just felt seen. And she just gave me that little extra spotlight to make me feel comfortable and seen, and all with kindness and Friday bingo games and just little special ways to make me feel special. And that was Mrs. Chester.
Oh, I love her name too. I think of that children's book, Kevin Hinkey's Chester's Way. Is that?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I love all his stuff. So the name Miss Chester makes me smile just hearing
Read
about
those
that.
all the time.
Right? So you began your career as a recreational therapist working with people with disabilities before becoming a kindergarten teacher. How did those early experiences shape the teacher you became?
I was fortunate as a recreation therapist to land a job that was community-based. So what happened in our location where we live is the recreation departments are too small to provide programs specifically for people with disabilities. So each town, they formed a consortium, and each town would give part of their recreation budget, and Northeast Westchester Special Recreation provided programming for children from age 4 to adults to 74, whoever could participate. So my early experience was I called myself the keeper of the fun. What a good title. But I was really fortunate to work with a wide variety of ages, a wide variety of disabilities, and across a wide variety of programming. So whether the programming would be a Friday night bowling league and club, a dance at the Westchester County Center for people in group homes, an art program for children with autism, taking adults with various disabilities to Atlantic City for the weekend, you name it. We did it and had a lot of fun doing it. So that was my earliest 6 years of my career. Fortunately, I was able to keep that career on the side and do that part-time. And I'm still connected to the people at Northeast Recreation because it's like family. Anyone that participates there really does. The family trusts the staff who work there. and the staff really know the whole person. So that was very formative for me in my career.
I love that you're called the keeper of the fun.
Well, that's a self-imposed title.
I know, but I think, oh, that just sounds, all the different needs and trying to find it. But you're like, oh no, this is fun. I love it.
Yeah,
So
definitely. I mean,
I'm
and
glad.
to have a master's degree in recreation, I get mocked a lot, like, really, what are you doing? You counting, wiffle balls and baseballs and things like that. But therapeutic recreation is a really valid field, and really it's about equity. And that's
Yeah.
what really drew me. And it's really about self-actualization. So when you think about self-actualization, it's like, what does the person need to be at their very best? What feeling do they get when someone totally gets them and they have access to the things that make them happy and they have understanding for what they need and their values are recognized? Maslow says that's when a person feels self-actualized. Well, I think in recreation settings, that's the key, the gate in, really, because that's people's leisure time. That's something they choose. So I think that was really formative for me with the equity principles. And then by working with so many different ages and levels of disability, I realized that when someone felt regulated, when someone felt seen, when I could make just the smallest of accommodations to level the playing field so that they could participate, whether that was adapting the handle on a bowling ball or whether that was listening to a story about their family celebration, just making someone feel seen and welcomed and a part of it all was really a gift that I call it like a stone that I started to polish, right? And just throughout time have really polished that stone.
I'm curious, like how did your transition to kindergarten come about?
I didn't want to leave the recreation field. I loved it, but I soon realized in my late 20s that I could do both. What was I doing every day? And in providing recreation programs, I was really planning, organizing my materials, thinking about what I was going to do, making accommodations, evaluating what I did, adjusting it for the next time. And I was like, oh, I'm a teacher. I think I just didn't go into teaching in the beginning because my family is all my families are teachers and my mom was a school nurse. And I was just like, I want to do something different. And then I ended up doing exactly the same. So
That's
I think later on, I just felt like in my late 20s that I really could do both. And where I really shined also then was summer camp. Camp for me was really the peak of fun and joy and, a little freedom maybe away from home, whether it was a sleepaway camp or whether it was a town camp, but just that opportunity to swim, to run, to play. So I was able to pivot and do, classroom during the year, Northeast during the week on a Wednesday night, a Special Olympics program or something, and then devote my summers to camp. People thought I was bananas working as soon as, I would start planning and working at the end of May and work June, both jobs. And then the idea to school ended to go to a sleepaway camp and stay there for the entire summer. Teachers thought that was bananas, but I was at my happiest, right? It's a simple life sleepaway camp. You need 4 pairs of shorts, 3 t-shirts, lots of energy and song and creativity and marshmallows and it's all good. Camp is good.
Good.
Yeah.
It sounds like a blast.
yeah.
Sounds like a blast. Fast forward 27 years later, you working with kindergartners have also become a super strong advocate for families with special needs. What would you say you wish that more parents understood about advocating for their child in the primary school years? Because I mean, we as kindergarten teachers, we come across the same thing, and you have so much experience. What do you talk to parents about, in terms of advocating for their child?
Yeah, I
when
mean,
they
this is the advocacy is really the reason why I stay in kindergarten. All my career has been between kindergarten and first grade, but kindergarten definitely being my favorite. And the reason really is, to work with parents so that they know the language of school. So that's first and foremost, because when their 5-year-old comes home and they say, "How was your day?" and they're missing their baby that they just sent off, they get fine, or they get "it was okay," or they get a complaint about something, and they just, spent the first 4 formative years of their life, breathing the same breath, knowing everything about their child, and now they're giving their child up. And they just don't have the language of the landscape of the day to even ask the right questions. So, being able to communicate with a family and say, when we do reading, this is what it looks like. When your child, this is the flow of your child's day from start to finish. This is what we're working on. This is how I'm accessing that. This is how you can access that. So that type of language about the flow of the day, so that their questions are more specific. So, so when Mrs. Zarro was on the carpet reading a book in the afternoon, like she does after snack, what was that story about? That kind of questioning gets the family more information than getting the answer fine. So that's number one. And then number two is, with that same concept in mind, how do you really know your child in that situation? How do you know your child in a 1 to 18 or a 1 to 20? How do they present in that way? So by giving the landscape of the classroom information to the family, and then starting to put the little breadcrumbs down of, your child's the type of learner who, your child is the type of learner who loves to listen to a story and share their ideas. Your child is so kind working with a partner. The way they share their math manipulatives, and the way they decided how they were going to build this tower and see who had more, giving them really specifics about their child. And I think, like any teacher, for me, that changed dramatically the type of language I used when I had children. Because when you got to that first parent teacher conference, probably in my early teaching career, it was like, this is what they're doing. And then I started, and I was getting like half attention, because that parent who sat in front of me really wanted to know, is she safe? Is she eating? Is she
Yeah.
kind? And he really looked at it more as like a job evaluation, right? Because they raised that baby for 5 years. So I'm the one that's giving them the job evaluation and saying, yes, she shares.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jenny would started this, and she would say, 5 years ago, they weren't on this planet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you think,
Yeah.
it's quite profound.
It's a miracle, all the things that they can do when you think about, at such a young age, everything they're doing. But you make such a good point of, this is a big year of the child really standing on their own 2 feet, and the parents don't know everything, the dynamic of the class.
No,
And
we really
and
don't.
The parents as well.
Yeah. And then especially parents of children with special needs, right?
Yeah.
When the child is identified as a preschooler with special needs, the parent's part of the therapies. The parent's driving to the therapies or sitting in the same room with the therapies. And now you have that ability for them to be the advocate for their child in a totally new landscape that they do not understand the language of, like to give them the landscape to make that connection and to see. And especially in kindergarten, I think we often declassify children before we have a time to see what they look like in a 1 to 20. You know what I'm saying? They might be in a school in New York, it's with a SEIT, right? A special education itinerant teacher. They might be getting that as their services when they're in a preschool, and now they don't have that, or it looks different, or speech therapy is in a group, it's not 1-to-1. Occupational therapy is not crawling and jumping and building and creating. It's very handwritten driven. So what does that mean? And how can they become a better advocate is something that I have, great empathy for and understanding.
Yeah. I think that's so important. Can you share with us? You have children, correct? Yeah.
So I have 3 right now.
Uh-huh.
They are 27, 25, and my youngest, it will be 23 on Monday. So 27,
Oh.
25, 22. My 22-year-old is my son that has autism, that's on the autism spectrum.
Okay. And did you learn a lot about the advocacy work and how important it is having, all 3 of your kids, but in particular your son?
Yeah, I absolutely, because I think that I was able to put myself in the other person's shoes, right? And also teach them the language that I learned specifically along the way. I mean, I think I was an advocate way before that, and that just solidified it even more, that my emotions for, equity and opportunity were now, solidified because of my son.
You have been an advocate for a long, long time. You mentioned earlier about having the equity, and I love that you have these definite things that guide so much of your work. So naming them: equity, access to the good stuff; leading kindness with your heart; and leveling the playing field. Can you tell us what those ideas mean to you in your work with children and families?
Yeah, I mean, when you boil it down to that, I think it makes it really simple, right? Doesn't it? And makes it that everyone can do it.
Yeah.
I think that it just makes it simple, right? That everybody can do it. I think that it is really just opportunity, right? When we think about equity, we just want a chance to do and live a big, beautiful, bold life, right?
Yeah.
So that leveling the playing field is something that I was doing way back when I was a recreation therapist, but it really just talks about, okay, you want to do this? This makes you full and happy, or you want to try that? What do we need to do so you can access that? And how can we just make one simple solution, right? If I smile when someone comes in and make the place a calm and welcoming place, right? Through kindness, that levels the playing field. If we have a ramp in a school that didn't have a ramp, that levels the playing field. If I turn someone's desk so that they have one side to a wall and one side to their peers, just so that they're not overstimulated, that levels the playing field. So if you're looking at your job and your life through that, what does that person need? What I love about kindergarten, which I think is the gift of kindergarten, is to give the kindergartner that language. So what I love doing right away, and this is my little platform that I didn't share with you before, but the anti-bullying campaigns that are out there, we're missing the mark on them so much, right? Because that education doesn't happen in sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade. That education happens in kindergarten. So when a kindergartner knows themselves, what do I need? What type of learner am I? What do I need? And they're able to articulate and say, oh, and I model that all the time. I'm like, I'm the type of learner who, when I sit on a stool because my legs are really busy. I don't do well in chairs, or I'm the type of learner that always has something in my pocket so that I can use small hands instead of using big hands. And I'll model the heart rock that's in my pocket, or, different things with that language of I'm the type of learner who, I'm the type of person who. So right away, they start to see themselves as the type of person and see their similarities instead of their differences. And when you see your similarities and you see yourself in other people who just need these little tiny accommodations in life so they can access it, you are protective of that. You understand someone and you would not hurt them either emotionally. You not hurt their heart or their body, as we say in kindergarten. Do those words hurt your body or your heart? We would never do that because we see ourselves from a very young age in the person when you do that type of language. So, in New York, we had this campaign called Stomp Out Bullying. Well, why would you ever even use an aggressive word like stomp in an anti-bully campaign?
It's so true.
I was like subversively going through school, ripping down those signs and putting like kindness matters little stickers around my school, because don't even put that energy into our planet. If you put into our planet the positive energy of love and kindness, makes all the difference.
Yeah, stomp out the bullies. That is hilarious.
Yeah.
I love how those 3 points, equity, kindness, and leveling, I love how they work in conjunction with one another. And it's true, like when you explain it that way, it does feel very simple and doable, no?
Yeah. Well, and to the point is, you mentioned little tiny adjustments make all the difference. And, even just changing a poster from Stomp Out Bullies to Kindness Matters.
Yeah.
Big shift. Big
Kindergarten
shift.
teachers are doing this all the time,
Oh,
right?
yes.
Draw a picture with a box of crayons that only has gray crayons. Oh, would you rather draw a picture with all gray or with lots of different colors? Oh, you'd rather draw that picture? Okay, well, wouldn't you want to have a class like that? Wouldn't you want to have friends that look different? Kindergarten teachers have all the tricks to make someone
Yes.
feel safe and comfortable and included. So if we just pay attention to kindergartners, the world would have a very different trajectory.
100%. Well, thank you for all your good work. I love hearing your stories because I do think there's a special place for us kindergarten teachers. We view things very differently. One of our favorite stories from you is the letter that you wrote many years ago. What led you to write to Guide Dogs for the Blind, asking if dogs that didn't qualify as guide dogs might help children with autism?
First and very foremost, I am a dog lover. So,
Me too.
and where I live in proximity to Guiding Eyes for the Blind is probably 5 miles away from it. So, anytime you walk through our community and you see a yellow lab or a black lab, someone will proudly say that they are a reject. So, service dog, guide dogs all over the country have these dogs that are not suitable for guide work. Because if you think of guide work is with a person who is blind or visually impaired, and the guide dog has to make the decisions. So that dog's qualities have to have that leadership quality. And then when a dog then is career changed, is the industry lingo, what happens with that dog? So that got me thinking, when I'd see people in my community, it got me thinking about, well, what happens with that dog? And I started looking 21 years ago for service dogs, and I found that it was out of my reach. Service dogs at that time was $25,000, and now they range anywhere from $25,000 to $40,000 for a family. And the agencies are wonderful. They will absolutely say that they'll help you fundraise, but you have an early diagnosis. In my case, we had the diagnosis of autism. I was just elbows deep in that. The idea of thinking about fundraising, I had to just take a leave from my job. We had hours and hours of therapy. I was managing the family, managing him. I couldn't fundraise. So that wasn't for me. So that's why I was thinking about a repurposed dog. I didn't even think a service dog was something that I could get because no one ever gave a service dog away for free. And then when I wrote that letter, it just was one of those, kismet times in life where the letter got to the right person's hands. And that person said, I have been noticing that there are more service dog organizations out there for people with autism. Is this something that we can do? And that's why the year delay. She started studying it and she held on to that letter and started looking at their agency and what they can do and what it would take to do that. And that's when she called me up a year. I thought that was a letter in the wind. I didn't think that letter was ever going to go anywhere because I said, my son has autism. I'm a mom of 3. I stopped my job, but to be his mom, and he doesn't connect with our family and he doesn't have language. And there were so many hard things in that letter. And I don't have any money, but I do have a fenced in yard and I do have a kind heart and I do like to take hikes and I am a dog lover. I just didn't think there was a shot. And she just is a huge empath and she knew her dogs and knew the capacity of her dogs and what they could do and the magic that they can bring. So she started studying autism service dogs and created really, which is now the foundation of BluePath service dogs, is that our dogs tether to a child. So the dog, a vest on the dog, a parent as the lead on the leash, and the dog is tethered to the child around the waist so that if the child would to bolt or wander or drop, the dog drops down into a hard stay. And then the child is tethered and the child can't go anywhere.
Wow.
So that safety mechanism is really something very special to BluePath because of just the statistics of autism and drowning, the statistics of autism and eloping, and that family fight or flight, that you're always in this, how do I keep them safe? How do I divide my attention between my other kids? And having a service dog for us in BluePath and giving them to families for free really is it literally is life changing.
Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why drivers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years now. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they'll show you options that fit your budget. So whether you're picking out your first policy or just looking for something that works better for you and your family, they make it easy to see your options. Visit Progressive.com. Find a rate that works for you with the Name Your Price tool. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Did you know Fast Growing Trees is America's largest and most trusted online nursery with thousands of trees and plants and over 2 million happy customers? Whether you're planting fruit trees, adding privacy, brightening things up with flowers, or bringing in houseplants, Fast Growing Trees has it all. Even better, they can help you find options that are right for your climate, your space, and lifestyle. Click Order Grow. Every plant arrives healthy with the Alive and Thrive guarantee straight to your door. So if you're ready to get planting, this is the moment. Right now, they have great deals on spring planting essentials, up to half off on select plants. And listeners to our show get 20% off their first purchase when using the code WWO at checkout. That's an additional 20% off. Better plants and better growing at fastgrowingtrees.com using the code WWO at checkout. Fastgrowingtrees.com, code WWO. Now's the perfect time to plant. Let's grow together. Use WWO to save today. Offer is valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions apply. Go to growingfasttrees.com for details.
You received this phone call, this incredible phone call. And how long after the phone call did you receive your dog?
Yeah, that was the fun story. So she didn't say on the phone, like, I want to offer you a dog. She was scoping me out. She just said, I read your letter and we'd love to meet. And I said, okay. So I made sure that everyone was out of the house except for my son because I didn't want to make any promises and get anyone's heart involved in this. So it was very clandestine. I didn't even tell anyone about the letter. And then she came over and for about 2 hours or so, she played with my son. She was on the floor. She spoke with me. We really got to know each other, and she really got to know the family dynamic because when you are the head of a service dog organization, you really know your dogs, right? The first and foremost is she has to protect her dog. She can't put her dog in a situation where the dog won't be self-actualized, right? The dog can't be scared. The dog can't be fearful. The dog can't be unsafe in any way. So she was coming from that perspective of really knowing her dog and then really trying to know my family and trying to know Danny and our needs. So there were no promises before that. And then when we walked out to the car, we both just kind of looked at each other and said, so, like, what is our next step? And she said, oh my gosh, she just started crying and she said, you're it. You'll be our first family. Will you do this? And I was sobbing and I said to her, and I remember my words, I said, I really just hope that this dog helps my family heal, because the tornado of autism really just had ripple effects on so many parts of our lives that were then changed and different. And I just felt that as a family, we needed healing. And that's when she was driving up the Taconic Parkway thinking, healing autism. And she named the first program that she did Healing Autism. Fast forward a few years after that, that program morphed into BluePath. And BluePath came with the lead trainer, the lead vet, and a marketing person coming together saying, let's do this our way. Let's keep continuing this mission. And now we're at our 10-year mark. We just graduated 4 more dogs. We have facility dogs. We have service dogs. And we are going strong 10 years later.
That's incredible. And now you serve as the board president, correct?
Yes and no. I am officially now for the last month the board president emeritus because after the cycle of 10 years, I needed to roll off the board. But I always say I bleed blue. So BluePath. And I am still very, very involved in that. And yeah, always. We call ourselves BluePath because of something that the service dog, when it came to visit me, was wearing a blue service vest. And at one point I had said something to one of the trainers, it's like hope in a blue vest, know. And what BluePath does differently than any other service dog organization, when they partner with you and you're selected to receive this autism service dog, you have this service dog for life and you have BluePath for life. You're not just dropped off with the dog. If anything changes, if you have any needs, if you need more training, if you need support, we have a program called Parents on the Path where we meet and we support each other to navigate schools, to navigate vacations, to navigate whatever we need. And you have trainers at your access. You really become part of the BluePath family.
That's
So
incredible.
it's just hard. If your podcast is going out nationally, that's a little bit hard because we only serve within the 3 hours of our location. So
Okay, so it's East Coast.
New Jersey.
Yeah, but these kinds of things, they can grow. And I mean, it's so, I mean, you never know where it's going to go.
That graduation on Thursday, and we graduated 4 dogs out with their families. And one of the graduates gave a story and said, I was driving down the road with my 2 sons. She had a baby and a 2-year-old, and her 2-year-old had just been diagnosed with autism. And she saw a BluePath magnet on a car. She lives in Staten Island and saw a BluePath magnet. And she went and said, BluePath service dogs. And she went home and Googled it and realized that her son was too young to receive a service dog, waited 3 years, called us back, and now has a service dog because of a magnet she saw in the car.
Oh my gosh. That's incredible. You just see the ripple, like you said, the ripple effect.
Yeah.
How does BluePath make this possible for families to get these special dogs?
Fundraising. We're
Fundraising.
non-for-profit. Yeah.
Okay.
And why I say I bleed blue really is because BluePath aligns perfectly with my core values, right? With equity and kindness and accessibility. So it's just absolutely so kismet that it all goes together. So if it aligns with the core values, right? These are not original values to myself. I mean, these are values that belong to many other people, and we hope most people in the world, right? So our generous donors really see that in themselves. A lot of times they are either dog lovers themselves and believe in the capacity of a dog to make a difference. And they are humans with kindness and have these same core values of equity and kindness and inclusion. And when they see the fit, they really want to be part of something good. And the story after story after story about the impact that these dogs have on families now able to go out into the community. I mean, the first thing I did when my service dog Shade came home was I took this stroller that I had and I threw it out on the curb. It felt so good because Danny was 4.5 and he was a big guy and he did not belong in a stroller, but I would strap him in because it was the only way I can keep him safe. Or I would jam his legs, imagine a toddler in the supermarket cart, and I would jam his legs in there so I could buckle him in so I can read a label.
Yeah.
And now I didn't need that anymore. I had access into the community. I can put the dog in a stay at Stop and Shop, so I could read a label for a second. And everywhere I went, anyone in the community just lit up and wanted to hear our story. They just saw what was happening and saw these families rejoining community. And that's really the magic of the service dog.
It is. You mentioned you'd reached out because you wanted your family to heal. How was that daily impact with Danny having this dog? Shade was the dog's name?
Yeah, Shade. Yeah.
Shade.
So it was really a divide and conquer mentality, right? If I had 2 kids, now I have 3 kids to 2 adults. We were in a zone defense, not a man-to-man. So it was, I would get Danny and my husband would get the other 2. So I would be at events and I would be physically present, but mentally making sure, does he have snacks? Is he going to run away? Is he safe? Is someone judging us? All those kinds of thoughts that would be going through my head when I was present in my community or not. We couldn't go to church together. One would have to stay home and the other would take 2 to church because church was very hard for him to be quiet or for him to regulate in. So everywhere we went to the beach. I lost him on a beach in Florida. We must have had 15 adults there. And my girls were just burying their flip-flops playing. But when they couldn't find their $2.99 red, white, and blue Walmart flip-flop, all the adults went to help her find the flip-flop. And he walked down the beach. He was gone for 6 minutes. And that was very scary. So, all of a sudden for a family to get a service dog, all this opportunity opens up. All this inclusion in their community with their family opens up. this joy becomes just fills their heart with hope and healing, like I had said in that word. And then also, the best part too is a little selfish of me as a mom. When my son would go to bed and everybody would be tucked in, the dog would be by my feet as I was researching or reading and giving me comfort or nudging me so that I had to take a walk and I had to get out. I had to stop what I was doing and just be in nature and breathe and regulate myself so that I could be a better mom to my kids.
When you got Shade, and then how long did Shade stay in your life?
So Shade lived until she was 13. So Dan was 4 and we got her I think he was about 14 or 15 when Shady passed after a long life. And then we were about 6 months without a service dog, but he didn't need a service dog for safety at that time. He was a different young man, right? He was 14. He wasn't wandering. He was speaking. He was connected to his family. But autism and neurodiversity are interesting, right? So he would often be more on screens. It was easier for him to regulate that way. And we wanted to get him out and be together as a family. So we ended up going to BluePath again, and they gave us a companion dog. So a companion dog does not have the legal rights that a service dog has. He can't wear the vest, but Ranger, who was then career changed because he didn't make it as a service dog because of his own little quirks. He's a little spooky sometimes in nature when he hears noises and things. So he wouldn't be safe when tethered to a child. But, BluePath will often then give out these companion dogs to older people on the autism spectrum who might need it for feeling included, feeling regulated. Now it's Dan, let's get your dog and let's go take a walk. Let's go take a hike. His favorite thing is to watch Ranger go swimming or in a muddy puddle or laugh at him or throw a tennis ball to him. So not a service dog, but still a part of the BluePath family and still matched up again, them looking at my family dynamics and saying, we have a dog that can do this, but can't do this. And you have a family that needs this. So let's put our heads together and see what we can do. And I'm on magic of round 2.
That's neat. Is there a way for listeners to help support the mission of BluePath? What can we do to help?
I think, first of all, follow BluePath on social media because it just makes your heart happy to see.
I've been doing it and I just love it. The posts are so adorable.
They are. Yeah.
It
just makes your heart happy. It feels like you're a part of it, right? Because you're watching these puppies grow up with their puppy socializer and you're seeing these beautiful little puppies. So the path of a BluePath dog is first where they're bred, right? And right now, like we just had a litter of 7 and they're with the whelper. So our whelper who worked with us with this litter of 7 is a volunteer. And that's how they volunteer. They take care of our dogs for the first 10 days. And then our dogs go to more of another like whelping until forget the name of that person. Then the whelper is another volunteer that takes the dogs for the first 10 weeks of their life. So a litter of 7, a litter of 10, whatever we have, that is a very special kind of family with a very special kind of skill set who will take 8 puppies and keep them safe for us and give them lots of social situations and keep them with their mom. And then we have puppy raisers all over the country. And our puppy raisers get training from BluePath and we get, Zooms and check-ins and things like that. But our puppy raisers have been college students, have been retired people, have been, people who work and take the dog with them to work. So you get this 12-week-old puppy that you're going to raise till about 1.5 with a tiny little BluePath vest that your job then is to give them socialization and give them experience and walk them in different environments so they get used to that and you teach them all the most important skills. And then at about 12, 14 months, the dog comes back to BluePath and we assess the dog and evaluate, are they ready to go into formal training? And now when they're in formal training, they're working with the trainers, going to schools and going out into the community. But we have volunteers then who keep those dogs, we call them fosters, and keep those dogs in their home. But from 9 to 5, maybe the dog goes out and works and then comes back to their foster family who then commit to help us raise this dog. So, and then we have babysitters. So when the foster family goes away, someone might need to babysit for our dog. So we'll set them up with, the crate and the food, and it's just a 1-week commitment or a weekend commitment. And then you're part of our BluePath family. And then we have donors. We have people who name dogs for different important moments in their lives or people in their lives. We have people who just drive for us. We have people who, Girl Scout groups and volunteer groups who make dog treats for us. I think once you learn the BluePath mission, and you know it's a mission of kindness and safety and inclusivity for families, you just want to be a part of it.
I mean, we got to get BluePath on the West Coast too, but I want to be a babysitter. I want to take those dogs for a week at a time.
You said it's just East Coast.
There are other guide dog schools and service dog organizations throughout. Just the BluePath mission is just a little bit different in that it's free and that you have our commitment for life. And some of our families are on their second dog, like us. They're on their second service dog. It depends on what the family needs and when they start working with us, at what age. Our hope is that we could, one day take our adults that have now grown up with us, right, and give them meaningful employment and have them socialize our puppies for us and really have full circle moments where we come back. So we have such a big, beautiful vision, and just a matter of time and the generosity of others to help us meet our goals of just community, right?
I love that, building that community. I mean, what a full circle. You're such a visionary too, I can tell. You do.
And I think we call it an active learner in kindergarten.
Active learning. Yes, you are. Definitely, indeed.
So we will switch gears just for a second here and move into a different idea, because another area of your work involves something called the Speller's Method. And you recently completed certification to become in the Speller's Method. Can you tell us about what the Speller's Method is and who it helps? Because it's pretty incredible.
So the Speller's Method is one of the curriculum or methodologies that gives a voice and gives communication for someone who's non-speaking. So that person could be someone on the autism spectrum. It could be someone with Down syndrome. It could be someone with apraxia. So it looks at our speakers, and the terminology now is really non-speaking, minimally speaking, or unreliably speaking, right? And so we look at that, and all three of those really can benefit from the spelling methods, whether the method is something called rapid prompt method, which has been around for about 20 years, something called spelling to communicate, which is another type of methodology, and then Speller's Method. We're all doing the same things. Non-speakers or minimally speakers do not have the ability to produce words reliably that match their intentions and their thoughts and their feelings. So you take that ability of communicating and you make it gross motor instead of fine motor. So gross motor would be, you would use a black, like stenciled letterboard, and you're thinking about language across two continuums. You're thinking about accessing communication across a motor continuum. So you have to teach someone using a letterboard how to move their body in a gross motor way, generating from the shoulder to point to letters. And I know at first blush, if you don't know motor planning or dyspraxia, that might seem simple, but for someone to connect their brain and their body when they have dyspraxia and apraxia, it's very, very challenging that their intentional motor responds in a way they want it to respond. So it takes time, and you practice, that this gross motor movement, when my arm goes across my body to the left, that's where the A is on the board. Now let me move my eyes over to where the G is. Okay, my eyes go there. Now my hand goes there. So that motor continuum of using different size stencils when letters are bigger, and then getting more fine motor and putting 26 letters on a board, and then getting more fine motor. And instead of a letterboard that has stencils on it where a pencil can poke through a hole, you move to a laminate board, because now you can control that gross motor movement and you don't need to go all the way through. You can kind of gradate your movement. And so you go to a laminate board eventually you go to a keyboard, because now you can make that gross motor movement more fine. Your eyes are zooming in on a smaller target. Your gross motor is more controlled. So spellers will follow that motor continuum. And then they use a cognitive continuum about learning lessons and answering questions first that are in the lesson itself, then eventually moving on that continuum to answering open-ended questions about the lesson content. And then the final one would be to ask, answer, or represent their own thoughts and intentions and feelings and emotions, or answer questions about that and be able to have communicative intent in and autonomy of their communication. I think watching the Spellers documentary really does a nice job of putting it all together. But again, right, it's about what modification can we make so that someone can communicate, number one. And number two, I'm sorry, I misspoke, should be the number one, is presuming competence. Presuming competence that the person has the ability to have their own thoughts, feelings, and looking at those diagnoses very differently than we have in the past, and shifting our paradigm to say that this is a brain-body disconnect, not a cognitive disconnect, and look at motor disabilities that we have research on for years. We just haven't totally made the jump into communication as motor and breaking that motor disability down.
Yeah, we'll put that documentary in our show notes for people to watch. It's mesmerizing, and it makes you realize, wow, there is so much that we want to continue to discover in how people communicate.
Yes. And the idea that we want to continue that, things are never settled. Things evolve. We learn more. So, one of my guiding principles is know better, do better. If you're constantly a learner, then and you're constantly reflecting on what you've learned, or why someone is unable to learn that, and you're reflecting on that and making accommodations, it's just never ending, right?
No, and you're going someplace this summer, correct? Aren't you going to a conference?
Spellers Method will have a conference in California, in San Diego, in October.
Oh, in October. So
Yeah.
we would love.
Yeah, after you come back, we would love to have you on again just to focus on the Spellers Method, because it's gaining a lot of momentum and we're hearing more and more about it. And we have so many questions. Fascinating.
Tricia, I could talk to you all day. You're so fascinating to me. You really are.
Thank you.
Usually we have a time where we do a speed round, and I realized we didn't formulate any questions, but I feel like we should just kind of wing it, Christine. Should we ask her some quick questions?
Yeah. Okay. So quick questions. Coffee or tea?
Oh, definitely tea. Okay. I have an addiction.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Is it herbal or black tea, caffeinated?
Oh, anything, any kind of, tea's so beautiful. You could have so many different kinds.
That's true.
Yes.
Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Both.
Yeah,
if I don't go to bed by 10, I catch my second wind. I think it's a genetic thing. And then I'm up to 1, just percolating ideas. So I'm up early, but I go to bed late.
That's how you get so much done. That's how you get so much accomplished. What is your go-to self-care method? What do you like to do to unwind?
Nature, really nature. Just I'm at my peace when I'm around something green and my feet are in the grass and a dog is next to me, and just breathing, really simple.
What's your favorite part of the kindergarten day?
Oh boy. Favorite part. I think any kind of buddy work, whether it's doing math manipulatives and hearing their language and hearing them defend their thinking. In the last 10 years, that teaching methodology has really evolved. Awesome. Because the ability to pop in and hear their thinking and then give everyone a voice instead of just the person who raised their hand, so turn and talk buddies, favorite part of the day.
I love that. I agree. They're so impressive, listening to those conversations and their ability to even, repeat what the other person was talking about.
How they don't repeat it. And you're like, oh, but you had a partner. What did your partner say? And they're like, I thought you were going to ask me what I was saying. No, what your partner was.
My goodness.
Okay, last question. What's a memorable moment with your companion dog currently?
Teaching him how to swim was really fun. You think that Labradors know how to swim, but he was raised in New York City. My companion dog is named Ranger because he was actually raised as the puppy of the New York Rangers. So he had a big social media profile before he came to us. Our puppy raiser worked for Madison Square Garden, And that's where she raised him, at Madison Square Garden with the Rangers. So he lived on the Upper East Side, was taking subways to work every day at a couple-month-old. So when we got him, I was working at a sleepaway camp, and he was like, sticks, woods, water? What is this? So it was really fun to have all the counselors and everybody try to come and teach him how to swim. Hysterical. So he still loves a good puddle.
That is awesome. He's a New Yorker all the way through.
He was.
Great. So we want to share some big little lessons that we've gotten from you today, because you've given us so many wonderful things to think about. So Jenny, do you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, for me, what has stuck out is, Tricia, sometimes we get overwhelmed with a situation. We think, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? But to me, you're like, well, what's the next step? What's one small thing I can do? And it just helps me to think when I'm feeling maybe not sure what to do, your words are going to come back to me, because that's what we teach in kindergarten. We always sing the Sound of Music song, let's start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. And as adults, we have to remind ourselves, because those little small movements build on each other. So thank you so much.
I always say, look at your feet, not the mountain.
Oh, yeah.
As a hiker, look at your feet, that's all you do. You'll get up the mountain.
It's kind of connected. I'm the kind of learner who, you're the kind of learner who, because, knowing that about yourself, I think is also really helpful. Like teaching small people to understand that, but carrying that with you as you grow older, forming your identity is so important. So thinking about who you are as a learner, and
being able to advocate for yourself.
Exactly.
And or to be able to say, that's just who I am. It's not right or wrong. It's just who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Tricia, is there anything that you wanted to add to, some of the big little lessons you've learned over all this advocacy work?
I think that, keeping it simple, bringing things back, trusting your instincts. I think sometimes we have decisions in our life that we think we have to rush into. And it's always better to pause. I think a 57-year-old woman can say that, right? We have the gift of time, but It's always better to pause and to breathe. And one of my favorite things that I love to say to parents when I'm working with them is that you have a PhD in your child. Like, you know your child. So just take a breath, think about it, and you know the answer. You know what you want to do. I mean, you might not know how to do it, but you know your child. So I think that we all have inner wisdom that once we are dysregulated in any way, we can't access it. So being calm, being in nature is definitely helpful. Slow down.
Beautiful, beautiful, Tricia. Well, we will include the documentary. We're going to include BluePath so everyone can find out more information.
If this episode resonated with you, we'd love for you to share it with a friend, a fellow parent, or an educator.
You can find us on Instagram at Teach Big Little Lessons, or email us anytime, teachbiglittlelessons@gmail.com.
And we will stay tuned for another episode with Tricia later in the future.
It's so nice to talk to people who walk a similar path, right? And have similar values and have dedicated their life to do that with little ones. So it's always fun to get kindergarten teachers together.
I love working with kindergarten teachers. They're the best.
We're a breed of our own. So I like to say we don't have all the answers, but we do have a lot of experience.
Yeah.
And remember, big little lessons are everywhere. So until next time,
thank you, Tricia.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.